Random stuff time! Not too many topics this time, but let's get started anyways. First of all, a little bit more about the X-Carve. I just posted my review video about it, and what surprised me the most about it is how much you liked it. I got pretty much nothing but positive feedback and comments saying that my review was the best one of all of them. I kind of can't understand this, because I wasn't happy at all with this video. The first 4 or 5 minutes of the video I knew that I wanted to make it in this time-lapse. I know that ahead of time before I even started to assemble it. I just know I record everything, throw it in time-lapse and do a little bit of narration. But the other part was then more or less not planned at all. Because assembling the whole thing was easy. But then it didn't work. The first problem I had was that I had to reflash the Arduino. I don't know why I even had to reflash it. I did everything that the instructions said, but it just didn't work. So I did that, then it would connect to my computer. But after that, I had the scaling issue. To get this fixed, it took me about 3 or 4 days. And after 1 day searching for solutions, I just contacted the support. And this was kind of a really slow going, because I emailed them, they emailed me back right away. And I replied again, but then I had to wait a full day before I got my next answer. And I answered again, and then I had to wait again another day before I got another answer. I don't know how busy they are at the support service, but I mean, come on, it's possible to give me more than one answer a day. And this was one other point of criticism that I forgot to include in another video. And because I was so frustrated because of all the issues with it not working, I forgot a lot more that I wanted to say, and yeah, I think I have to do this now. So there are a few more things that I wanted to mention. These hold downs were supposed to come with some threaded inserts, but mine didn't include them. Not really a big deal, I just put in some T-nuts, but missing parts. Another thing that is more of a problem is the plug that comes with the machine. I live in Germany and they knew that this machine would be shipped to me in Germany, and here we use different plugs. This one doesn't fit at all. Our plugs look like this. At least the other end is a universal connector, so I just grabbed one of mine. But I mean, when the machine is shipped to a certain part of the world, you should be able to just plug it into your wall. It would be enough if they included an adapter or something, but yeah, I can't use this at all. And the other thing with this cord is that it's short. I guess they said it's 3 feet, and I mean, this is just way too short. Another thing I mentioned in my review video is that you can't move the spindle to 0. And I found out that the problem is the limit switch. It's just in the way. You can't move it further than this. And that's what's holding the spindle back from reaching the 0 point. And I already made this hand wheel, and many people were concerned that when I use it, that the stepper motor induces some current and probably damages the G-shield or the Arduino. But Inventables already sells these hand wheels themselves for exactly this use. So I guess they thought about it, and they also did. There's some security or protection for the Arduino or G-shield. So when I use it, you can see there are lights coming on, and if I turn fast, this fan starts spinning. So that's where all the current is going. Inventables wouldn't sell this hand wheel if it damages the machine. There's another issue with the gantry. It's made from these 2 maker slides, or just aluminum extrusions. And if you apply a pressure down, it pretty much doesn't deflect. It's really stiff, but if you try to rotate on it, it really deflects. Because these 2 pieces of aluminum extrusion are not joined together in the middle, and they can just twist away from each other. I guess you will never notice that when carving, because you only make light cuts, but a little bit stiffer would be good. I thought about putting just a screw through the middle and fasten it together so that the whole gantry is a little bit more stiff, but I don't have the right screws right now. But I guess that could help. And while I was reading through the comments of the review video, I noticed that a lot of you liked how much criticism I mentioned in this video. But that's exactly what Inventables wanted from me. I also saw some other videos reviewing this machine and only talking good about it. No criticism at all. But there are certain aspects that need to be criticized if you look close enough, and that's just what I did. But now let's move on. I got a question in the comments asking about my sanding blocks, so let's take a look at them. These are actually one of the first things I made after I started woodworking about 2 years ago, because I noticed pretty quickly that I needed something like these. And they are holding up really well. They're made from 3 layers of birch plywood, and the only thing I don't like about them is the fact that they are not tool free. After taking the screw out, you can just disassemble it for changing the sandpaper. This is the main body and it has a nut embedded into it, and these 2 different sized holes with the corresponding dowels on the other piece. And they make sure that when you put it back together that it's always a perfect fit. This bottom layer here is removable if it ever wears out, but after 2 years of use it has no signs of wear, so I think it will last forever. So far I'm really happy with them. The only thing that I would change if I ever remake them is that I would use some kind of tool-free design, because yeah, it's just a pain in the butt to always have to unscrew the screw for changing the paper. Okay, enough talking for now, let's also make something. For an upcoming project I needed a motor, so I looked through eBay and found this pump. The pump piece is broken but the motor works. It's rated at 1000 watts, which are about 1.3 horsepower. I got it for 10 years plus shipping, so pretty good deal. Now I just have to get this pump part off.
Disassembling the pump was really simple. The only tricky part was to get the nut off of the shaft. I had to put it in my vise, which grabbed the other end of the shaft, and then I could get it off. And there you can see the crack in this plastic piece and the reason why this pump was sold as broken.
I really like these motors for homemade woodworking machinery because mostly they have threaded shafts, and in this case I also have a key and a nut that fits on it. So this makes it quite simple to mount a pulley or anything other you will have to mount. Then they very often have sealed bearings. This one doesn't. It just has this seal that goes in front of the bearing. And they mostly have a mounting flange and a mounting foot, which makes them very versatile on how you want to mount it. And they also have a switch already attached to the motor. If you watched my last video, you will probably know that I assembled my X-Carve on a temporarily set up table on our pool table. But as you can see, it doesn't really like that. But because I have no other place to put this machine, it needs to stay on the pool table. But to protect the table a little bit, I want to make a cover plate that goes over the whole table.
First I vacuumed the table, but you will see later that this was completely useless. For materials I bought 2 of these slats and 3 sheets of OSB. As I don't have a miter saw and this piece is too big for my table saw, I used a bandsaw, but you kind of can't see this because of my arm. For cutting the OSB sheets to size, I had to rotate my table saw in the workshop, and then it worked. To get the exact same length, I cut both of them at the same time.
So it turned out that 2 sheets of OSB are enough to cover up the whole table, because the 2 offcuts are big enough to replace one of these bigger sheets.
I only had to cut them to size.
Now I want to join these OSB sheets together with these slats, and I already got everything laid out correctly. I just trace around the slats. And now I know the areas where I have to pre-drill for some screws.
Having me helping myself really speeds things up. And then for screwing the OSB sheets to the slats, my dad came to help. Unfortunately, the edges didn't come out perfectly straight, so we had to trim them down with the circular saw.
I'm gonna add 12 of these feet that will lift the whole plate up off of the edge from the pool table. Okay, so now basically it's done, but it looks a little bit ugly, especially the edges. I think I will add some edge banding.
I had a whole lot of these FollowUp sticks and they work perfectly for edge banding. But first I had to make them nice and flat and square. And then cut them to the right width. I also cut some wedges from the leftover OSB, you will see why later.
As you can see, I already prepared a little bit for clamping. Now begin with gluing on the edge banding on the corners, and once that's done, I fill all the gaps with the other pieces. And that's how it looks like now. Alright, the corners are dry. Now I have these gaps and I cut some of the leftover pieces the exact length with which I then can fill up these gaps.
Once the glue was dry, I rounded over the edges and chamfered everything with the hand plane.
And now it's really finished, and with this edge banding it doesn't look that bad anymore. Last thing missing is this little machine here. And enough random stuff. Hey, that rhymes. Because assembling the whole thing was just the first problem I had that and many people were concerned, and they already made this hand wheel, and I really thought, but then I had the other scaling issue, and this really made, but the other part was then more or less not very, and they also have a switch already attached to the motor. Fail.